Welcome to the first podcast from the Azure Cafe in a lovely Marrakesh. Well, I wish I was not sitting in TVP in Reading, but there you go, never mind. So the purpose of these kind of podcasts is just to talk about general Azure themes that we see with customers, and things that we're interested and passionate about, and then invite various people along and they can talk about it and get the real experts in. We're just here to facilitate them. So my name is Matt, as I said. I'm an Azure specialist and I'm joined by Michael. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. My name is Michael Ayeni. I'm a cloud solution architect within the Azure core space, so Azure infrastructure. Paola, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Paola Annis. I am based in Milano, and I am an engineering manager in the Fast Track organization.
Cool, thanks both. So today is a topic I think pretty much, and if I'm being brutally honest here, is that pretty much every single one of my customers will mention at some point. And it varies, dependent on whether they are new into the cloud or not so new into the cloud. So, but the thing that we're going to talk about today is cost management, and how to. And I love actually reading what you wrote about this, Paolo, and how to tame those costs and to get the value out of the Azure, those Azure investments that customers made. And Paolo is one of our. I'm going to call you an expert in this because I think you are. And you've written a book about this whole topic, which we've been reading, quite a bit recently. And so we really wanted to talk about that in a bit more detail today, and just so we can send this out and then people can understand how they contain those costs, get the better visibility, accountability, and all those good things, so they continue to use it in a manner that they become accustomed to. So that's the purpose of today's call. So look, Paolo, I'm going to kick off with you if you don't mind, and then could you just give us a quick kind of overview of what you wrote about, and then we're going to, I guess, bombard you with questions of what that some questions are our own, some we kind of grab from customers as well.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, before I start with anything, I have to say that I don't feel like an expert in anything. I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or just, that the more you know, you don't know. So
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that is so true. Yeah.
So, but let's say that this book is coming out of an experience, a very strong one. And I wrote the book with one of our customers, actually. And what happened was they migrated a huge data center into Azure. And the final bill at the end of the month was 5 times what they were expecting. So now the CEO came in and started asking questions because the numbers were really out of any expectations. And so we started, Giuliano, who wrote the book with me, was at the time the cloud manager, the cloud team manager for that customer. So we started working on this. It took us 8 months, but we did it. We shrinked the bill about 60% from the original migrated part. And we learned so much that in the end, we thought, okay, maybe we should put this in a book because it's an experience that may help other customers do the same.
Yeah. Wow. 5 times. Yeah. Cool.
5 times. Yeah, that was scary.
So just on the, sorry, go on, Michael, go for it.
Sorry, Matt. No, I think when you've had a chance to read through the book, you can see that it's not just theories. I think what came across reading that book was it came from experience, and it was good to see you and your colleague just join up those, because a lot of cost optimization or cost management topics are disparate. It was good to see all of that covered together in one place. Sorry, Matt, you were saying.
Nah, you're good. No, I totally agree with that. Quite cool. So there's a lot of terminology that kind of floating around the whole cost management piece at the moment. And we obviously talk about it a lot at Microsoft and the cloud adoption framework and whatnot. So, we're just trying to, I think, just just to help people, I guess, make sense of what we talk about when it comes to cost management. And the kind of first thing I really wanted to start off with, Paola, was really you kind of talk about these 4 cost optimization strategies, I think, or maybe strategy is not the right word, but you kind of call out in the book these kind of areas. Do you mind just kind of giving a bit more information about what those 4 areas are?
Yeah, sure. So what we call the pillars of cost optimization were also a result of the experience. So the first thing we did was cleaning up what was left behind because of the migration, because we were doing stuff in a hurry, or because you underestimate things, because you really normally don't care about those things in an on-prem data center. You don't care about the storage that is over-allocated, or a VM that is over-allocated, because your hardware is there and you're not paying by the minute. Suddenly, when you're paying everything by the minute or by the second, over-allocation doesn't seem such a good idea. And so you want to get rid of everything that you have left behind. The second thing is right sizing, because of what I said. You don't have to over-allocate stuff. You have to do exactly the right size, which means the right size to have a proper performance in your applications, but not a bit more. So exactly what you need to have your application successfully running in the cloud. Then there's the point of reservations. Reservations, when I started working on Azure, weren't even there. So then they were added, and they were a big success because they amount to up to 70% discount on a VM. And again, I always try to explain to customers, why do we give that discount? Because that gives us back the predictability of the course that we need to allocate in a data center. And that is a huge thing for someone who is, for a cloud provider who is running data centers with millions of cores. So knowing that your course will stay there for 1 year or for 3 years helps us a lot. This is why we're giving the discount. It doesn't mean that this is staying forever, that you cannot ever change reservations. You in fact have to change reservation, but it's still a commitment that you're making that helps us do the planning. That's all it boils down to. And then when we did everything, this is again coming out of the experience. We did everything. We right-sized it. We reserved what we could reserve, and it still wasn't enough to get to those 5 times bill at the end of the month. And so we started looking at the applications, and so tuning the database. If you are migrating legacy application with old databases, these are typically put in VMs that are large and waste a lot of resources, but for nothing, because it's really the database that is not optimized. And so we pushed, because we had, the attention of the CEO. So at that time, we could do whatever we wanted, as long as this would bring savings. So we started checking the queries in the database, and by improving the queries and optimizing the database, we were able to downsize the VMs. This was huge, because suddenly you have, I don't know, an M64 that now you can run on a E32. It is a big change in money and in resources. And so I cannot stress this enough, that the database and application optimization has to come at some point. This will be, again, it might be that the customer decides to innovate, to migrate to a cloud native application. That also helps. If you have a lot of migrated workloads, maybe not all of them you're planning to move into cloud native applications. And so I would still recommend doing some optimization to use resources in an optimal way. Okay, interesting. So there was a couple of things really jumped out at me there, Paola. I was intrigued, first of all, about, when you talk about cleaning up resources, and I was thinking, how did you do that? How did you find out, firstly, that this particular resources needed cleaning up? What was it there? How did you do that, Peter? So first of all, there's a bunch of scripts out there. I will want to add to this podcast that go and see for unattached resources. They just orphan this, or typically the disks are the most expensive, but even IP addresses. You assign a static IP address, and it's not, the cost is really low. It's what, €2 per month. So you care, but try to think that you have 1,000 of them. Suddenly, you're wasting €2,000 per or pounds per month on unused static IP addresses, and you don't want that. Also, things tend to accumulate over time. So now you think that those 2 IP addresses are no big deal, but in 2 years or 3 years from now, you have those, and you have another bunch of stuff that is orphaned or unattached and is accumulated. So we have scripts that go look for it, and then it's not over. So that the first step is you get to recognize what you have to delete. But then deleting stuff is the hardest part, because you find a bunch of disks that are unattached. Because what happened? Someone was basically deallocating a VM, and the disk stayed there. And now you ask yourself, okay, but do they want the disk to stay there? Are they using it as a backup? So if I go and delete the disk, is it a problem for my organization? So what we do is we advise the customer to enforce a policy, a process of snooze and delete. So I will put the disk on the lowest possible tier first, because it's there, it's not attached, so no one is using it. And then I will notify the owner that, hey, I have put your disk in the lowest possible tier because right now it's unattached and it's unused. It's wasting money. If you don't reclaim the disk within, I don't know, 30 days, I will go and delete it. And we find that this type of policy, the customer feels better, with deleting stuff, because they do it according to what their internal customer wants. And most of the times, people don't even reclaim unattached stuff. So they don't even go and ask for that.
Yeah. So it's almost like you're, and then correct me if I'm wrong here, but it almost feels like you're having an SLA associated to, resources that are no longer used, and then trying to kind of drive some kind of culture within the organization that if this resource isn't used in a 30-day period, it's bad for business, bad for the, whatever you need to achieve. And therefore, I guess it will start to make people think about, once you start saying, oh, you haven't deleted this resource for the last 30 days, it might even start instilling in, when they are building out new stuff in the future, it'll make them think, that, I shouldn't, do I really need this disk in the first place? Or I need to kind of set a script off to delete it when I finished using it. So
perfect.
So that must help with the culture.
When you move house, you have a bunch of boxes that are essential, and you write everything down. And I don't know, I moved the house a lot of times, so I'm an expert here. And then you have those boxes where there's stuff in it, but you don't even remember. And I don't know, 1 year, 2 years, you haven't even opened those boxes. Why do you keep them? Why do you keep them? You only keep them because you have the space. But if you were to pay for the little space of keeping that single box, you would throw it away immediately.
That's true. No, I got that from the book as well. I got, because one of the things that I tend to overlook, maybe as some other architects, VNet peering costs. And you had a section there. Because you had a section there where you said, and you talked about, okay, start from understanding, doing like the right sizing, and then you went into, okay, have a look at some of this costs that we don't tend to focus on. And you talked about, so the IP addresses, public IP addresses, VNet peering cost, and you went into detail. And then this policy you just mentioned now about how you do snooze and then delete. And I liked all the workflows you had. Well, maybe you can talk a little bit about forecasting as well, because as an architect, our customers have to use the pricing calculator to forecast how much it's going to cost. maybe you can talk us through some of the techniques you mentioned in the book to get better forecasting done.
So yes, and before I get into that, because you mentioned VNet peering, and as an architect, I have been a cloud solution architect, so that I feel your pain. Sometimes you want to draw the best architecture. It's super cool. It does everything that the customer wants, and everything. Also, you're talking to people who have managed networking, on-premise networking for a long time. So they want to segregate, they want to secure, the shared services. So yeah, no, I want my shared services to be in the hub, and then everything else in the spoke.
That's right.
But then comes the bill at the end of the month, and you realize that your chatty application was sending traffic from, the hub and the spoke for, I don't know, thousands of pounds. And you ask yourself, is this the best architecture for my customer? So I went there a lot of times, went back to this architecture saying, yeah, it's not the best to put this application in the hub, but it will save me £2,000. Then probably I would go and accept it, because putting together the applications that are, I call them chatty. I mean that they have a lot of data exchange, with the other applications or with the database. Putting together these things helps you get rid of a lot of what we call the lateral expenses, which you don't typically care about, because when you're sizing an application with a pricing tool, you don't care about the VNet peering that you have to pay to have the application talk to the hub of shared services, because it's not something you usually did in the on-prem data center. Right. Now you have this thing, and you only realize it at the end of the month if there was, and I wouldn't call it mistake, but it was like an oversight, from the architectural part, that you didn't think that this application could bring a lot of cost in VNet peering. And I had this ask from a customer once that was saying, yeah, but why are you charging so much on VNet peering? And guys, I mean, VNet peering is using VMs. Everything runs on virtual machines within Azure. So whatever you're doing is costing me, Microsoft, a VM to run all that peering, all that data exchange from the hub to the spoke. So if you put the application into the hub because this is where it fits better, I am also happy, because I am saving resources that can be used for something else.
That's really good to know.
And I forgot your original question.
No, it's interesting. I listened to you. The fact because forecasting comes up a lot. How to do that, and it's interesting to hear you talk about VNet peering and the cost associated. And I'm guilty of it as well, where you kind of go, you don't outwardly say this, but I don't, but you do think, don't worry about that cost. It's so minute you won't notice it. And it's then there's a number of services like that, and it's like, and you get asked by the customer, what do you think the cost would be, and you kind of normally sizing virtual machines and storage, which is the majority of the cost, and then you kind of overlay it with a percentage. But that percentage, as you rightly point out, increases over time, and then you get to the point where you gave the example where you're 5 times or 5x what your original estimate is. So that forecasting element is critical, and something we need to pay attention to, I think, moving forward. And then, so Michael mentioned like the pricing calculator. So there's tools available to help. What other tools are out there and in the arsenal that can help people, not just forecast, but just generally from a cost management perspective?
There are a lot of good tools out there. But the pricing tool is the basis of everything, because if you have a team of architects that are planning to deploy applications, then they need to know how to use the tool. And it's a very good one, because you can pick the region, the service, the currency. You can save your quotes, and then you can export them and share them among your company. So I would definitely recommend customers to go and have a look into the pricing tool, even though the pricing tool only works with price list. So you will find that in some cases, your customer has a different price, a different agreement. So they can download their own price, their own pricing file, which is fine. And in that case, they will have to run manually the differences between what the pricing calculator gives and what is their discounted offer in the end. But back to tools, the cost analysis is the first tool that I recommend using. And if you use it well, it will give you a good control of what's happening in your virtual data center. What I typically say is you should know your daily cost. You should know your daily spend, and you should know how this is divided by service name. So how much are you spending every day on virtual machines? How much are you spending on storage? How much are you spending on log analytics or network or PaaS services? So you need to have that type of view to be able to then act on it, because the first thing you do when you're optimizing costs, you will target your 3 or 4 biggest spenders. Typically, these are virtual machines, storage, and logs. I can tell you that this is what I see all the time. But it might be, I have seen customers having a large spend on app service or on functions or API manager. So you have to know the battle that you need to fight. So knowing is the first thing. There are tools that allow you to do budget. There are even tools that allow you in the cost management blade to do budget allocation for shared service. In the book, we mentioned that we did it manually because we didn't have the tool back then. But now we do offer a tool for cost allocation. I think it's in preview, but it's out there, where you can basically split some of the costs by resource group, subscription, and I believe management or tag. These are the three. It is tag, resource group, and subscription. So you assign them a percentage of spend, and then you can find the same code, the same cost that you allocated in the destination subscription or resource group or tag. So just to give an example, a practical example, if you have your 2 departments, marketing and I don't know, sales and marketing, and then you have your shared services. Now, sales is using 40% and marketing is using 60%. So the shared services should be allocated with the similar percentages. So you want the shared services to be allocated 40% to sales and 60% to marketing. You can do that with the cost allocation feature within the cost management blade.
Cool.
And then I think we announced, because we had built.
You read my mind. It's not like we set this one up.
Yeah.
Yes, go on, please. I was about to ask you. Go on. Talk about literally. I pretty much 2 days ago. So this was announced at Build. But yeah, please go talk a bit more about.
No, it's great. We announced that we are plugging our OpenAI features into the cost management blade, so that this type of questions that I am making, all the questions that I'm making in the book, you could have someone answering for you. So you could ask your copilot, if we can call it cost copilot, how much am I spending on a daily basis, and how is it divided by service name? This is a very important thing. It doesn't mean that suddenly you have cost control, though. I am wary of, because I use Copilot all the time, and it's not fixing all my life's problems. It's helping a lot if you know how to use it properly. It will give you an enormous boost in operations, because suddenly you don't have to do all that manual research and find stuff and aggregate and merge and pivot and whatsoever. So you have everything at hand, but then you gotta know what to do next. So what if I know how much I'm spending of VMs on a daily? What do I do?
So it's remarkable, really. I mean, it's like the fact, and and we're not just saying this for the purpose of this podcast, but when we were chatting before this, we were obviously there's a big, the AI is pretty much everywhere and it's getting announced, and Copilot here, Copilot there, and we're both saying, all three of us, I think, we're saying, I'm really cool if we had that capability, cost management. And it almost feels like the product group were listening into our initial conversations. But I can imagine that being a real game changer in all seriousness, and reading your book and you're asked those questions. What's my day? What am I spending today or yesterday or at this time? And what services cause it? And then asking which resources do I need to clean up? And it's got it there. And it was interesting what you were saying there as well about, and I hear this when everybody talks about AI is, it's not, it will make your job easier. It's not, you're still needed. It's not, it doesn't equate to complete management, but it's there as the name suggests, as an assistant to help you kind of get that mundane work and tasks done, which would have taken a huge amount of time to do previously. So yes, we had to get that one in there, definitely. It's good stuff.
That was really.
I think we'll be able to ask Copilot or whatever it's called. We're not really good with names.
AI.
I like
AI assist. Or was it Cost AI assistant? So
Okay.
yeah.
So,
well, I think they might have changed the name by the time we upload this podcast.
Exactly. I mean, we'll be able to ask, how can I save on my VM spend? Okay.
Yeah.
But there's a problem with that, because on paper, you can do a lot of things to save on VM. The problem I see with customers is that there is no process of cost optimization yet in place. Because when I say, okay, you should, and I'm giving you really a very simple example, you should move your VMs to the latest models because they are cheaper and better. This is obvious, it's a no-brainer, because you're saying you have an EV3, and if you buy the same VM with the same cores and memory on a V5, you find out that it's cheaper. It's not half the cost. It's maybe, I don't know, 10 euros, but think of having 1,000 VMs and multiply those 10 euros or pounds, by 1,000 VMs. The cost is high, and you can get a lot of savings. But when I tell customers, okay, this is an exercise that you have to do, and of course, to resize a VM, you will need to switch it off because you have to restart it. Then typically the answer is, okay, but I have no one to do that.
Yeah.
No one ever allocated to cost saving and optimization in companies. And the cost manager in companies usually is someone who was there picking the short straw. I don't know how. Because you have to be technical, you have to understand cloud, but technical people, engineers, don't really like dealing with costs, because it's not cool stuff. It's not the cool technology that we want to play with. It's finance operation, and we are typically, as engineers, very bad at finance.
Yes.
So this is the real problem that I see with customers, that they don't have someone allocated. There's not a job role yet, or it's starting to be there, of this cost manager, cloud cost manager, that is a technical role but with finance knowledge.
Sorry, Michael. I know you. I can tell because the blue light comes up on the screen, and I'm like, George,
I was itching to get in there, because it's really, really interesting that you say that, Paola, because Matt and I have discussions with a lot of organizations, and they are cost conscious, but we don't see that ownership. So that one person who is, technical and combines a bit of FinOps. So it's really interesting you would say that.
Yes, and for example, same experience that is in the book. Not only we had someone who wasn't appointed as cost manager, but we had to also talk to the cost controller, to the finance guys. And finance guys typically don't care if I explain that a virtual machine is different from another. So one of the things we really started doing was trying to think what a cost controller would want to see. And it's not the thousands of models of VMs that we sell. They want to see how much I'm spending on compute, which is a generic thing. And now you have to normalize compute from one VM to the other, because compute of a M size is different from compute on a B size. These are two very different VMs for us.
Mm-hmm.
So you start finding out how to put this in a KPI for your company. And this is one of the most difficult things, to translate the cost spend from Azure into a finance thing that can be digested from your finance operations. That is one of the most difficult things that I have done, honestly.
Really, it's interesting. Michael's the first person to use the word FinOps as well. Well, I was wondering when
I think I win the bingo, don't I?
I thought I won't shout out bingo for using the word FinOps. But it does get mentioned by customers now. I do hear a lot of customers using the term FinOps, and I not so myself and Michael actually are aligned to UK government sector, but speaking to my colleagues in the enterprise commercial, there are customers there, and we're not all, but it seems to be some that now have this kind of a cost management, I won't call it cost optimization, but almost like cloud cost manager almost. So it does seem to be a new role that seems to be coming. Even if you just go on LinkedIn and do like a job search of that title, it seems to be coming up. Some big UK government, sorry, not government, UK enterprises have those jobs. Seem to be, a new type of job role.
It is, and again, I mentioned that I see a lot of customers who are not fully controlling their costs, but on the other hand, a lot of customers are very good at cost optimization and handling their costs, and these are the companies we should take inspiration from, because they know, and again. This is coming out of the book also. The reason why I work well with Giuliano is that as vendors, we don't always know what's best for our customers in terms of finance, in terms of operations, in terms of maintenance. And so having someone at the customer side that knows what they need to keep this running, that helps a lot to then give them back what they need to do. So as an architect, you can say, okay, I can tell you nearly everything that you can do with Azure, but I don't know what you need to do on your side to make it work on the cost front. I don't know if I'm explaining this.
No, you said it perfectly. There, it was interesting, and I'm maybe it made me think. Oh, I'm guilty at times of thinking. We like to think we're customer obsessed is a term that gets used, but that doesn't mean we know therefore what is the right thing to do in each scenario for our customers. And it's interesting there that you're talking about having someone in the customer side that you work closely with, and then we can make our suggestions and whatnot, but we don't live day in, day out on the customer side. They do. They know what the pressures they're under. They know what the environments. They know what they need to deliver. So I think we could advise as best we can, but then if we got that kind of collaboration with an individual or group within the customer, then I think make these things a lot a lot better.
Yeah,
in my mind at the moment, and now I'm going through examples of where I'm going on my days. I think I've done exactly what you've just said, thinking is the best thing for the customer. It probably isn't, but
yeah, and again, what we saw successfully done at customer was, for example, setting, because you said, okay, we were starting to see the role of cost manager, whatever we want to call it, but the cost manager alone can do very little, because then this person will need people to act on what they decide. You know, okay, I want to resize my VMs. Who is doing that? I still need support, and or I want to enforce my snooze and stop policy. Who is going to help me with communicating this to the application owners, and why the application owners should go with what I recommend them, because I have a stake in cost saving, but they don't. So the next step is exactly this, that everyone needs to have a stake, a KPI measured in cost optimization. The application owners must be rewarded for cost optimizing their applications.
Interesting. And then, do you see that in practice with all your, like, having almost a KPI associated? I have heard of a gain in the enterprise space of one particular customer. So is that something you're seeing quite a bit? Is it?
We see that more and more, and it's a mixture, because now, so first of all, you have companies that are adopting DevOps now. Okay, so first take off the boundaries between developers and infrastructure. Now it's all together. And now you're also saying, hey, it's not just development and infrastructure, it's also cost. It's all together. So now the application owners and developers have a responsibility on everything. On one side, they want the best performance. So until you tell them that they have a KPI on cost, they just don't care. They want the best. And even if they're over allocating, they don't care, because their application must run, especially if we're talking about mission critical applications. They have SLAs, and they need the performance. Suddenly you're measuring them on cost as well, and now they have to compromise. So I have seen people taking a step back, people who were advocating for, hey, let's use the best possible VM, let's use the best possible tier of an app service or a PaaS service. Now they take a step back and think, okay, maybe I can do this with an AKS cluster and and scale and use a lower VM model and size. So, but until you do this action of handing the responsibility to the application owners, you won't get much done at optimization level.
Wow, that's really good, Paola. It's really good education for me. So you talked there about KPIs for existing solutions, but what about KPIs for like technical debt? Is it worth having KPIs? Because we're seeing out in the field, we're seeing a lot of customers who are facing increasing technical debt. Is that something that can help also?
Yes, and this is something that we touched in the book, because in the end, if you remember the 4 pillars, we said cleanup, right sizing, reservation, and optimization of your application. So when you're optimizing your application for technical debt, it is one thing. You know it's there in the back of your head. You know you have to do something, but you're not really pushed to do something. Suddenly, you have a cost constraint into your technical debt. And it's not just a cost constraint, but in some cases, you are funding the fixing of your technical debt, because you get to say, hey, I will have a better, newer, cleaner application, and it will cost less. So the money that I am investing in optimizing it, because guys, you need to invest money in optimizing applications. It's not something you can do with a cost manager. You have to do it with a team of developers. But suddenly you find out that you can save money in the long run, and it's more money than you have to invest. So the return on investment on this is really, really short framed. I don't know if I'm telling you this right.
Yeah, no, you're good.
But the point is that you realize that you had this technical debt for a lot of years or months, and you didn't know how to act. And now you have the solution. The solution is you're optimizing for cost. So you're saving money, and the money you saved can cover the cost of reducing your technical debt. If you can put this in a process, a recurring process, because it's never a one-shot thing that you do, then suddenly you have a perfect KPI for technical debt, because when your technical debt goes high, this is where you have to optimize. You optimize, and it goes back down, and until the next step of optimization, you are okay. And in this, you are saving money on a OpEx basis, because this is cloud, and you are billed every month. So the savings that you are making now will reflect in the next, I don't know, 3 years, depending on how the finance operations go in your company. So this is a big deal. And if you explain this to a finance cost controller, it's not easy, but then you get approval for a lot of innovation for your applications. And this is the great point to make.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Yeah, very interesting about it. So just conscious of time, and it's been a really interesting discussion. I was just thinking, if there's like if a customer saying, I think you do this day in, day out, and something goes, oh, we've got this is our bill now per month, what's the kind of first thing do you kind of say to them to do first of all? Okay, before you do anything, go and do this. Is there one thing that each customer should kind of take away from this, or is there multiple things?
As I mentioned earlier, they need to know their daily spend, because that is really, and they need to know their daily spend, not just as a figure, but divided by service name. So how much they are spending and where on a daily basis. They have to know their patterns, because if they realize that they're spending more from Monday to Friday, then it means that they can shut down stuff during the weekend. So this is the first thing that I would look. And the cleaning up also, because people are hoarders. I believe that is the name. They like to keep they like to keep their snapshots, their disks, their backups, and if you go into their logs, I mean, it's unbelievable how you look into log analytics retention configuration, and you find out that these people are keeping, I don't know, terabytes of logs for months. And when you ask, okay, but why? Do you have a compliancy somewhere?
Yes.
And then the answer is no, because we are used to it. Okay,
yeah,
but
we used to do it like that. Yeah.
Your logs after 30 days. No, then why keep them?
Yeah. Okay.
So
Interesting. That's really so like that's simple. That it sounds simple. In practice, like and now we've got the AI system. There is in place. It should be, but just that simple thing of just knowing what your daily cost is by service name. Those in just to get gives them the visibility, and that will help reinforce a positive, I guess, cost conscious culture almost. And that's kind of your first step in this kind of journey. Okay.
Yeah. Also, because knowing your daily spend helps you recognize if there are spikes. Sometimes I have seen, for example, problems in an application that for some reason, for some bug in the application was consuming more network, more storage, more whatever. And we could only see it because there was a spike in the cost. So, but if you only check monthly, you will see the spike when it's too late. Because if your problem happens at the second day of the month, you have paid the full month of spikes and mistakes of your application. So you have to know your daily spend, and you have to go and look into it every day.
That's interesting. Myself and Michael have experienced that with a customer before, so quite recently actually. But yeah, knowing that kind of your daily rate in the back of your head, I think it's an interesting one for everybody. Yeah. And also, I've learned that we're all hoarders.
Me too. I like handbags, for example, and cats. So.
Yeah, that's all right. That's a good thing to hoard. Yeah. Anything else from your side, Michael? Just your.
No, I think maybe just along the lines of what you were saying just now about cost anomaly. So I think the lesson we learned from our customer who ran up a huge bill because they don't know their daily costs and they didn't have an alert system is all our customers now, we've had a discussion about having costs anomaly detection switched on. It's just a no-brainer, and it helps if there's any kind of malicious activity going on within the estate as well. You get alerted and you can take action as well. So I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the book. Reading the book, it was eye-opening for me because we get a lot of information. We work in the industry, but it was good to see all those cost discussions in one place. So thanks for that, Paola. Maybe my final question would be, who's the audience of this book? Because it's a no-brainer for as an architect. Yes, I need to read it. Matt, as somebody who does a lot of forecasting and technical specialization work, he needs to read it. But who should read this book?
So it's not a real technical book. You've seen that. I mean, there are scripts and configurations, but they are very limited. And the bulk of it is really how to put together the process of governance. So to me, this book is intended for cost managers, but even IT managers, CIOs. I mean, everyone who is starting or already playing with Azure. I might even say with the public cloud, because all of the concepts really apply to everything. Yeah. But I mean, everyone who is starting an adventure with an OpEx model should probably have a read, because they will learn how to deal with costs that are spiking, that are very granular, and that they are how can I say, changing constantly. Because that is the other problem with Azure. As soon as or with the public cloud, as soon as you're okay with defining your baseline, and then you turn your head and you have this new application that was installed overnight, and you didn't know about that, and now you have a spike in your cost because you didn't know about that. So you need to be able to adapt your governance to the ever-changing cloud.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Been dead interesting. Thanks so much for that, Paola. Yeah, been really good. Thanks again.
And thank you for reading the book.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. Thanks, Paola.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.